All right, hello. Welcome to part three of my What is Money series. This is the final part of the series. Go ahead and watch part one and two if you have not already. Let's get into it. So, part one concluded that money is a thermodynamic ledger. It's thermodynamic because it's bound by energy and physics and nature. And it is a ledger because essentially money is an accounting tool, keeping track of ownership, answering the questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how money is owed. Part two concluded that money solves bartering, and when it is easy to make, society begins to break. So, with part three, we aim to answer the solution to money. What do we do from here? Now, a quick refresher on modern money. For thousands of years, gold and silver was the de facto money after we went through cattle, salt, grains, tobacco leaves, all those different types of money. We're at gold and silver. But with gold and silver, the limiting factor was scaling it. And the Catholic military Knights Templar are very famous for creating that scaling opportunity known as international banking. And that was mentioned in part two. And what they would do is they would hold on to the gold and silver and use their power and their military influence to protect the gold and silver from being stolen, from being debased. And then they would give people paper claims on top of what they had in their vaults. And then they could carry the paper claims around as a form of money. That is typical early banking. And that was practiced for years, for hundreds and hundreds of years. But the problem is that little plus sign, because it takes two to tango. You have the gold and the silver, but then you have that fiat paper money, and you have to have what's called the trust in the middle of that, guaranteeing that the paper is the equivalent to the gold and silver. But the problem, due to game theory, is that people that are doing this, the banks, they're incentivized to have more paper claims than they do the gold and the silver in their vaults. And this is what modern banking is. Why we have MasterCard, Venmo, checks, and overall banking power comes from modern banking, the 1971, the end of the gold standard, when it doesn't matter how much precious metal is in the vault, we're just going to print money regardless of what's in there. Okay? Now, we're going to do a little bit of a briefer on the US economy. We're going to discuss the quote unquote value of the dollar and what's happening to the economy in the United States. So, after the US removed the gold standard in 1971, 3 years later, because they're scrambling to find out how are we going to get value behind the dollar. So we have to have something, okay? In 1974, the US agreed to offer military protection to countries as long as they sold their oil exclusively in dollars. And this was first done with Saudi Arabia. So you could essentially articulate that the dollar is backed by violence. Year after year, since 1974, countries have weaned off this quote unquote agreement by refusing US military quote unquote aid. Well, the US doesn't like that because if they can't give their aid, military aid to a country, and then that country doesn't want to sell their oil in dollars, then the dollar's worthless. So the US has been trying to force demand on their dollar. That's essentially what this is. Remember Lebanon, the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq, Libya, ISIS, and now Iran? America continues to quote unquote spread its democracy, its freedom to ensure countries' peace, tranquility, prosperity through missiles, through bombs, through violence. If the dollar was that strong and that great, you wouldn't have to force it on people. And, there's going to be some pushback. Well, Afghanistan was about this, Iraq was about this. There may be some little truth to that. Just how people say there's, you know, a nuclear weapon in Iran. We got to dismiss that. Really? Is that really the problem? Or is it because the dollar's worthless and they're refusing to sell their oil with the Strait of Hormuz in dollars and they want sound money? I think that's the main issue. And you can go into more historical details and research on that on your own. Do your own research on that. But at the end of the day, you have to have demand for the dollar to uphold this quote unquote economy that the US has. And the gig is up for the United States. The US imports, aka it demands in, its goods and services from other countries. The US therefore exports or supplies out its dollars and bombs to other countries. And countries have known this since the 70s. And that is why there has been all this geopolitical pressure and wars since then, from the 70s all the way until now. And countries are selling their treasury bonds, refusing to buy more and seeking sounder, harder alternatives. And you can see this with specifically China. They have just been going on and on with their gold purchases. Look at the central banks. Look at the central banks, foreign, not United States, getting all their gold reserves, not paper claim gold. Okay, that's another important thing. They have actual real gold. And then also you're seeing that real gold export from the United States. Countries are realizing the quote unquote strength of the US military is lessening year by year. Okay. Iran is manhandling America. The little tiny Iran. Okay. And they're controlling and dictating all this. And countries are like, well, you don't even have military strength to force your dollar on anybody anymore. And why do I even want your military strength and me agree to sell whatever I have in dollars to keep the demand for your dollars up? Why would I do that if your military is not even strong anymore? So if there's zero consented natural demand because the dollar is just worthless in and of itself, and if there's also zero forced demand, the United States is not powerful and violent anymore with their military, then what's going to happen to the United States and their dollar? They're absolutely screwed. Okay. Countries are refusing American dollars, debt, and their military aid while they're seeking alternatives. While those alternatives are being sought after, America has to find a way to realize their loss, aka the $40 trillion debt. So on the left here, you have the debt clock. It's reaching almost $40 trillion of debt. And on the bottom, you have that little blue line that's just been shooting up, and that is America printing money. And since there's no demand for their dollars, their debt, and their military aid anymore, they have two options. They have to choose. Either print, which is burn the country, or they can pay off the debt, which is freeze the country or the economy. Both are interchangeable words, country and economy. Print to burn, pay off to freeze. Now, what does that mean? Think of it as drinking alcohol. Okay. Printing money equals drinking alcohol. When a country consumes and imports and spends more than it produces, exports, and saves and makes, aka debt, it has two options. They can realize the loss by working harder than normal for a period of time to balance it out and to pay off the debt, or they can drink their problems away by printing money. Printing money just masks the pain, and it rots the country inside at its core. And you're seeing the prices of goods and services increase because the increase of the money supply does that. You're seeing the size of things. You're seeing smaller food portions. You're seeing just smaller everything. You're seeing things shrink. You're getting less for your money with the size of it due to the increase of the money supply due to printing. And then you're also seeing crappier substitutes. Refrigerators, washing machines, vehicles, they're not made to last like they used to be. And this is all because when you have money that is printed out of nowhere and it's worthless, you're going to get a worthless economy. And the more you print, which is drink, the more difficult it is to quit, which is the withdrawal symptoms. So you end up just printing more, which is drinking more, and then you just kill yourself. Instead of paying off the debt responsibly early on, like in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, and so on and so forth, instead of paying that off and going through a tough time, freezing the economy, and cutting it down to zero, they took on more and more debt without realizing they're just digging themselves further and further into a hole and killing themselves. Instead of trying to quit and go through withdrawal symptoms, they drink more alcohol, and then those withdrawal symptoms are going to be even more devastating if they try to quit. So, number 2, America's screwed, just to summarize this. So, option 1 is print money and drink. That is alcoholism. Prices increase, items shrink, crappier versions are manufactured. This is what you're seeing right now. America just prints their way out of things. But conversely, it's an illusion, because you're also seeing the stock market increase rapidly, because printing money can also be done through what's called the M2 money supply, where it's not the actual printing of the dollar bills. You can lower interest rates, which increases borrowing. Okay, that increases the supply through fractional reserve banking, through IOUs, through synthetic supplies. But who gets access? Who gets access to those lower rates, those lower borrowing rates? And that's part of part 2. Watch that, please, if you haven't. Does Mary Lou get access, or does Jeff Bezos get access to loan rates? Jeff Bezos. So that's why the stock market increases rapidly. And that's why you've seen the stock market be equivalent to the supply of money. Just take a chart of the increase on money supply, the M2 money supply, and then compare that to the stock market. It's the same thing. The stock market isn't increasing, it's breaking even to what inflation is, because that new money that's being manufactured and printed is being put into the S&P 500 companies, which, by the way, all have debt. And that goes into number 2. When you print money, which is drink alcohol, you get an abundance of worthless companies. Every single company in the United States, except for 1 or 2, just a quick AI search said this, because I was curious. They all have debt. They all have debt, and they all just get the new money that they get when rates are lowered so that they can borrow more. That's all they do. That's all they do. Now, there is a scale to it. There's some companies that actually produce things, and they could get off their debt levels if they want to do, but I don't think a lot of them can. So you see an abundance of these worthless companies, and then you see an abundance of worthless jobs, because people that are working at these worthless companies have worthless jobs. Okay. And just because you have a job doesn't mean you're contributing that much to society. And it's not guaranteed, because it's just a worthless company. And it doesn't even matter, because you're getting paid slim to none. Go back to part 2 on that, because wages don't keep up with the print of the money supply. So just because you're employed doesn't mean you have a livable wage. Okay. Worthless money creates a worthless economy with increased wealth gaps and cost of living. Choosing this route continuously feeds the monster that is killing you at the inside of your core. Versus option 2, America can realize the loss and quit drinking. And this is the withdrawal symptoms. Prices would decrease, items would grow, sturdier versions would be manufactured. That's music to your ears, right? But then here come the withdrawal symptoms. The stock market would absolutely be obliterated. They would crash. Okay? Because when you can't print more money, or when you stop printing money, all those companies that are issuing worthless, jobs, and because they're worthless companies, because they're taking on more debt than what they're producing, then if they don't get access to that new money, then they have to produce. They have to export. But if they're not producing or exporting a product, then they have no business. Okay? Their only business is taking in new money. It's just a cycle. So a strong money creates a strong economy with decreased wealth gaps and cost of living. And choosing this route, if America does so, which they won't, it kills the monster, but the recovery is brutal. The withdrawal symptoms are going to suck. but it's necessary for future thriving. So, what is the alternative to the dollar? Well, you've had what's called BRICS, which is a collection of China, Russia, Africa, India, etc. And they've tried to compile together and say, okay, we have all of our types of currencies, and we're going to promise to keep them as strong as possible, and everybody can have a diverse portfolio, a diverse representation, and diverse liquidity access to this currency. But that's gone absolutely nowhere, and that's still trust-based. Then you have what typically happens. Chinese gold-backed yuan. Okay? Essentially, this is what every other country has done when they've had the gold, because gold and silver are money. Okay? China has been getting as much gold as possible since the United States had their 2008 financial crash, and China had a bunch of bonds. They had a bunch of debt of the United States. And they're like, okay, we're ready to go. We are ready to go. We are ready to put down the hammer, and we have all these bonds, and we're going to make it. We're good. We're great. And the United States says, we're just going to print. And China's like, what? Like, okay, well, screw that. So in 2009, ever since then, they've been trying to get all the gold that they can. Okay. And that is what happens. They are the producers of the world. They make a lot of stuff for the United States. And the United States had all the gold. But guess what? You spend with the gold and you charge for the gold as the producer. So China is getting all the gold. And what they're going to do is, since they have all the gold, then they need to spend the gold. Okay. So then when they spend the gold, they're going to do exactly what the United States and all these other countries have done when you have the gold. We've seen this tale before, and it's a never-ending cycle. Okay? China's getting all the gold, okay, from the 2000s to the present day. Okay? They're going to become the financial powerhouse. But before China, it was the U.S., and the U.S. is slow. It's been getting away from that. Okay? From the 1900s to the 2000s, the United States was in control. But before them, it was Britain. From the 1700s to the 1900s, Britain had control of the finances. Okay, they had control of the gold. Before them, it was Spain from the 1500s to the 1650s. Okay, it's a never-ending cycle, because whoever owns the gold owns the privilege to spend, consume, and import. Okay, why would you want to produce, build, or export when you can just spend? Okay, when you have $1 million, let's say you have $1 million right now, okay, and you want to get a house for $200,000. Would you rather just build that house yourself, or would you rather just pay someone $200,000 to get the job done? Okay, 99% of the time, you have the money, spend it. So that's what it is. Whoever owns the gold owns the privilege just to spend, consume, and import. Owning the privilege to spend, consume, and import reduces the need to build, produce, and export. And when you reduce the need to build, produce, and export, you increase the reliance elsewhere, which is a foreign nation. Okay? And if you're increasing your reliance elsewhere on a foreign nation, you must spend, consume, and import like a madman. And you're no longer a self-sovereign country if you can't even produce, export, and build. You're relying on someone else to do that for you. You're just a colony of that other country. Okay? Governments, and this is the cycle. And then when you continue to spend, consume, and import, you no longer produce, build, or export anything. And then when you have nothing more to spend, then you have nothing more to build. And then you're left to dust. And then you have to rebuild. Okay? And this happens through fractional reserve banking, paper claims, IOUs, synthetic supplies, and national debt. And eventually, you have to realize the loss, the debt, and become a builder, producer, and exporter again. You're going to see that with China and the United States, where the United States is going to have a brutal, brutal recovery somehow, because they're going to have to become a builder, a producer, and an exporter again, whereas China is going to become the spender. Now, the crux of this all, the summary of everything that we've said so far. Gold and silver store value very effectively. but they do not move it efficiently. Okay, they're heavy and they're not divisible. Fiat currency does not store value effectively because you can just print a bunch of it, but it moves it very efficiently. Okay, you can carry the paper bills a lot more easier. You can write a check, you can do a wire, you can do Venmo, PayPal, your debit, credit card, whatever. So the crux of it all is the plus sign. Okay, when whoever has the gold and the silver says, okay, well, we want to scale the value of this gold and silver, so let's create the paper markets. Let's put the plus sign there. Okay, trust us. So now we have the ability to have the luxury to store the value of gold and silver, but move the value of gold and silver with fiat. But the problem is that plus sign is trust, and it keeps breaking for thousands and thousands of years. It's just this never-ending cycle. Okay, so what do? We need something that can store value and move value simultaneously without any trust and permission associated. And Friedrich Hayek said this: I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of the government. That is, we can't take it violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is by some sly, roundabout way introduce something that they can't stop. And the answer is Kaspa. Kaspa is the answer to Friedrich Hayek's quote and the answer to end this cycle of the gold and silver associated with scaling fiat. Now, I recommend you watching What is Kaspa first. That dives into what it is structurally and physically and technologically. That's like me trying to explain what water is and me telling you you can drink it, you can hydrate, you can do all these things with it, but then you still have the question, well, what is it? The answer is H2O. That's what that first video is. What is Kaspa? That first video explains equivalent to what an answer would be of water is H2O. Okay. So, but briefly, still want to have a briefer, what is Kaspa? So let's compare it to gold and silver. Okay. Gold and silver's in the Earth's core. To get the gold and silver, you need equipment like a pickaxe or a shovel. And to acquire that, you have to use your blood, sweat, and tears to mine it. That is energy. Compare that to Kaspa. But it's not in the Earth's core, it's in the worldwide internet. And to get it, you also have to mine it, but you don't mine it with a shovel or a pickaxe. You mine it with what's called a mining computer, okay, a mining rig. Okay, it uses computational power and it solves these complicated mathematical problems, and then you get the Kaspa. And it uses electricity, which is energy. So it's the digital form of gold and silver to a certain extent. I don't really like that example too much, but I believe it's the easiest way to onboard people. That's how I understood it first. But there are some differences. Gold and silver store value temporarily because their scarcity is technologically dependent. There's actually a lot of gold and silver in the earth, and there's a lot in space. And as technology improves, which it always does in humanity, it's going to be easy to acquire the gold and silver, which makes it not scarce anymore. So it's dependent on less advanced technology. Versus Kaspa, it stores value forever individually, and its scarcity is fixed at 28.7 billion. This is because it doesn't matter if the technology improves, it doesn't change the fact that there's only 28.7 billion coins, because Kaspa is technology or digital technology in and of itself. So it adapts. It can adapt with that new technology. Okay. And I'll get into more detail on what all that means, but it is fixed at 28.7 billion coins. Another thing is gold and silver can't move value globally. It's heavy to transport large amounts and is messy to divide up in small amounts. And that is why they've tried to scale with paper IOUs and fiat. Kaspa is different. It can move value globally peer-to-peer, and it's light to transport large amounts, and it's clean to divide up small amounts. It's just numbers on a screen. Okay. If you want to carry a lot of gold, it becomes very heavy like a bar. And if you want to cut it up, it becomes smaller than a coin and it gets messy like, grains. Kaspa, it's just numbers on a screen. You can have 0.002587 blah, 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 blah amount of Kaspa, and then add that to 1 and then have, another 2,600. It's whatever. Okay. It's fixed at 28.7, but the ability to cut it up is practically infinite. Like take a pizza, for example. Imagine you have a pizza. The pizza is fixed at, whatever the size, 24 inches. Okay. It doesn't change the fact that their pizza is 24 inches, but you can cut up the pizza as much as you want. That is Kaspa, but digitally. Okay. Now, what's cool is that you can move it globally peer to peer. With gold and silver, if you want to send gold and silver to somebody, you have to hand it to them with your hand. And then if you try to send it globally, you have to have a middleman. Okay. You have to have somebody to send it to you with a truck, with a plane, or with whatever. And with Kaspa, it's always peer to peer. You never have a middleman when you send Kaspa. Okay. It doesn't matter if you're next to me. It doesn't matter if you're in the next town, next state, next country, next hemisphere of the world. It is sent at the snap of the fingers, all light, all clean, instantly, done instantly with no middleman. Now, the last thing, and this is not exclusive to gold and silver, this is with any asset. Gold, silver, farmland, real estate, stocks, collectible art, oil, anything tangible that you can hold in your hand. It is easy to steal it. It's difficult to secure it from theft. What do I mean by that? If somebody projects their power onto you, they can take that from you. AKA, if they have a gun and point it to your head, you have to comply or else they'll shoot you. And then if they shoot you, they just take it from you. Okay? Versus Kaspa. If somebody holds a gun to your head and says, give me your Kaspa, if you don't comply, and they shoot you, they still don't have it. Because you have to give them your passcode, your what's called a seed phrase. You have to give access to the code. So Kaspa is the very first form of property rights. Okay, you can take it to your grave, essentially. Not eternally, but you can take it to your grave. Okay? Now, how does it work briefly? Okay, because I made some pretty big claims here. Kaspa stores value forever individually. Its scarcity is fixed at 28.7 billion coins. You can move it anywhere in the world without a middleman, and it's easy to secure from theft. How? Those are pretty big claims. Well, it's done because look on the right at the world and all those miners I put out. Okay. Kaspa was launched fairly and it's open sourced and it's permissionless and trustless. In order to change the code, whether you want to change the amount of coins there are in the entire protocol, change the amount that you have in your wallet, in order to censor a transaction, to block it, to seize someone, to do whatever you want with the protocol. In order to make that change, you have to have an overwhelming consensus, so a 51% majority of the people that are holding up the ledger. Okay, you have all these miners, okay, on the earth. Okay, you have some in the US, you have some in South America, you have some in Africa, in the Europe, Asia, whatever. In order to change the protocol in any way, you have to get the majority of these equipment to change it and to agree to whatever you're changing it to. And even if you do agree, you have to do it all at the same time, seamlessly, with no mistakes. Good luck doing that, because Kaspa's been around since 2022 and it's been flawless. It's been fine. Open source, launched fairly, permissionless and trustless, never been attacked. So Kaspa is humanity's first form of perfect money because you can save it as a store of value over time because it's durable. It has a durable past. It's just numbers on a screen. It's secure in the present. It's very practically impossible to steal or hack or censor or block, like I just explained. And it's scarce into the future because it's fixed in its supply. Check. Spending it as a medium of exchange across space, it's also fantastic, the best we've ever seen. It's fast, completely instant at the snap of the fingers. It's also mutual because it's peer-to-peer. It's between you and another person. It's mutual. And then it's also accessible because you just need a Wi-Fi connection. Anybody in the world can have a Wi-Fi connection. Okay. And then it's very good at being a unit of account within Matter because it's numbers on a screen. It's very divisible, it's addable, and it's interchangeable. So Kaspa is humanity's first form of money, or first perfect form of money. But there's also a difference. And I made this chart to ask the question, what is the difference between the group on the left and the group on the right? On the group on the left, you have seashells, rhinestones, like a rock with a hole in the middle. You have beads, you have bottle caps, you have cash, and you have Bitcoin. Versus the group on the right, cattle, grains, tobacco leaves, salt, gold and silver, and Kaspa. What is the difference between these two groups? The difference is that the group on the left only has extrinsic value. They have zero non-monetary utilities. Now, what does that mean? Extrinsic value means you have value associated with the denominator. It's only valuable if you can give it to somebody in exchange for something else. You can only use it as money. For instance, let's say I give you a $100 bill, but I give you 3 rules. You can't save it for a future purchase. You can't spend it as a current purchase, and you can't borrow against it. What do you do with it? Nothing. You can use the dollar bill to make a campfire or to wipe your butt, but it's just paper at that point. And there's a lot more affordable ways to do it than a $100 bill. What would you do with the seashell? What would you do with Bitcoin? What would you do with a bead? Nothing. You can't. Versus the group on the right. If I did that same rule, you can't borrow against, save, or spend your cattle, your tobacco leaves, your grain, salt, gold, and silver, and your Kaspa, what can you do? Well, you can eat your cattle. You can eat your grains and your salt. You can smoke your tobacco, and you can build with your gold and your silver. So now you're probably wondering, what the heck can you do with Kaspa then? What is what it's called? The intrinsic non-monetary utility. Programmable infrastructure. That is what is Kaspa's intrinsic utility. And how does it work? So Kaspa is perfect sound money. It provides people the ability to store, move, and specify value with no rules, no borders or laws censoring the who, what, where, when, why, and how of the transaction. But why stop there? Why don't we apply those same trustless and permissionless rules, those values, to everything we do on the internet? What do I mean by that? So these are some things that are being built or done with Kaspa, because Kaspa is the next internet layer. Okay. You have Kachat. You can get this on Android. You can get this on Apple. It's a messaging system that is decentralized and peer-to-peer. You can communicate with anybody in the world at the snap of the fingers, and nobody can censor or block your transaction. Nobody can collect your data or harvest it or sell it back. Okay, it's completely private. Nobody can do anything about it. Same thing, but K-Social, a social media platform. Okay, you can post any comment, like, dislike, repost, whatever you want, and there's nothing nobody can do about it. Kaspa Key is a non-for-profit industrial initiative, and they're making a bunch of products that they want to be shipping out. And they want to take the Kaspa's ledger, because Kaspa is an immutable, decentralized internet ledger. Why not use that ledger for 100% transparency? 100% transparency for any company. Right? If you want to upload something that shows that it hasn't been tampered with, hasn't changed, and it runs 24/7, 365, and It's not going to shut down, and there's nothing that nobody can do about it. Run it on these products that Kaspa Key are making. For instance, they're making one called Warp Core, and you can put the current financial structure, the current banking system on top of Kaspa. That is phenomenal. Okay. The next thing, one of my favorites, the coordination market. Okay. And you can visit it at www.coordinationmarket.com. The internet gave us the ability to communicate with people globally. But what's the point of communicating if you can't coordinate? That is the thing that coordination markets are going to solve. Okay. Read more up on that on their website. Okay. www.kaspa.com is a layer 1 DeFi marketplace. Okay. And they have what's called KNS domains. That's something that they also offer. Those KNS domains, the .cas, are going to be utilized on the new decentralized web, the Kaspa.net browser. It's a zero install client for the .cas decentralized web, KNS naming on Kaspa, content over IPFS. Runs entirely in your browser, no server, no account, no need for DNS. Okay, it's going to be utilizing Kaspa : Kaspa browser as the example of the name .cas. These are just a few of the many things that are being built on Kaspa. So essentially speaking, Kaspa aims to cut out the middleman not just with money, which is the government, but with digital applications, the companies. So bye-bye Facebook, bye-bye Amazon, bye-bye Verizon, bye-bye Ticketmaster, bye-bye YouTube. The possibilities are endless when you build on Kaspa. Okay? So that is what Kaspa is. Kaspa is the solution to not only censorless, immutable, borderless, trustless, permissionless money that is sound, hard, and good for the world, but it's also this new layer of the internet as a programmable infrastructure that you can build things on. Because on Earth, you can communicate with people face to face. And if you agree on something, then you go do it. You go build that thing. You build that building. You build that business, whatever. But on the internet, all you can do is talk to people. But talking is a means to an end if you can't coordinate or build anything. That's what Kaspa's doing too. It is the next layer of the internet where you can not only communicate with people, but build with them and coordinate and build the digital cyberspace frontier that is happening now, right now. Unprecedented. In my opinion, it is the greatest asset ever. And I have some final words here. The way I see it, Kaspa is humanity's next frontier. During any other point in history, when a government or powerful entity became too much, humans could pack up their bags and search for new land and opportunities. Sadly, that is no longer the case anymore. Kaspa is the next frontier because it is a fixed digital commodity in cyberspace. And not only is this commodity valuable in and of itself as sound money, but it's useful as infrastructure, making it such like digital land. Kaspa provides humanity with its first truest form of property rights where censorship, rules, laws, and violence cannot be forced upon for compliance. It's not a matter of if, but when. And with your help, we can make this happen sooner rather than later. Because money, nature, energy, they always choose the path of least resistance. So that is the end of the What is Money series. That is the end of part 3, the final part to the series. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you for sticking around. This was the longer one, about 36 minutes. Go ahead and comment. What did you learn? What do you want me to make a video on for next time? Any questions that you have? Go ahead and share this with your friends and family. We got to spread the word here. Some good stuff is happening with Kaspa. Love to see it. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. God bless. Bye.